So the basic, just to sum up what I'm going to say in 3 minutes, then you probably don't even have to come to the rest, is that there's, which is part of my idea with the whole conference, is that there's a lot of us who have a lot of experience with different materials, different ways of doing things, different ideas, different chidushim that we've come up in terms of the technical stuff. And if we create a group in a Chaverschaft, we can share that information. There's some people here who have a tremendous wealth of knowledge that others don't have that amount of experience. And if we have this Chaverschaft, we can draw from each other. And I'll just share some, like ideas about lechis, wires, and other things. But in general, when you're with your eruv and you're having an issue, so we do have a WhatsApp group that hopefully by the end we'll be able to get everybody onto this WhatsApp group where people can post, I'm having an issue with this. I want to know how to fasten this thing to concrete. I want to know what type of lechi would you use in this scenario? What type of wire would you use in this scenario? And then people can chime in either privately or on the app. And this way people can share information, because what I found when I started out in eruvin was that I had nobody, at least I didn't know, people to call. And I had to invent everything myself and try to figure it out with a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes. So hopefully, if we create such a Chaverschaft that all the materials that we don't discuss today, we can be discussed in the future. I'm going to start with l'chayayim. I'll go through the history of some of the l'chayayim that I'm familiar with and the advantages and disadvantages of them. And then when people have different experiences, feel free to chime in. And there's actually another mic here we could share if anybody wants to say anything. So initially, when I started out with eruvin, the main material that was being used was the half-inch U-guard. And this is basically the most common material used by Rabbi Micah and everybody who's building eruvin. The downside with this is that it's not UV protected, and with time, it would become very brittle and it would break. And also, it comes in 8, perhaps 10-foot sections, and where the unions are, so it depends on how you feel that unions should be done. Some people would just overlap 2 pieces. They would kind of do it like this, one piece overlapping the other, put U-nails all the way up. And not all poskim were happy with that because they felt that's minat sad. This one needs to be on top of this one. The difficulty when you do that is that, as somebody mentioned earlier, for every 10 feet of PVC from the coldest day in the winter to the hottest day in the summer, it expands and contracts 1 inch. So you're eventually going to have your pieces coming apart. Whereas if you had overlapped them like this, so even if they expanded and contracted a little bit, there was still not going to be a break. But when you're trying to do it like this, if they expand and contract, you're going to have a break in the middle. So most of us have started coming away from this, except where the utilities demand that we use this material. So that's this material. If anybody has any, experience other than that, yes?
Resolve a machokas between air posik and air posik is we line them up one on top of the other, but he puts a 2-3 inch piece behind inside, which has both a halachic benefit of satisfying additional poskim, as well as it keeps them lined up. So if a nail pops out, which also happens due to weather, so there's that extra piece behind.
Right. So basically, you're saying is you'd have 2 pieces like this, and then you would take a 3rd piece. You could put it on top, or you could put it inside. And that's actually the way that I generally start to do it now. When I have to use this material, that's the way that I do it. I also highly recommend that when doing that, you should use PVC glue, which I brought a little in with now. I know that some people have trouble. I have a hard time convincing them to use it. But if you use this glue, then the pieces stay together a lot more. Oh, so the truth is, okay. What he was saying was that the solution that they have is that they put one piece on top of the other, but then they take a 3rd piece, a small piece, and they put it in the middle, on the inside. Or like a joint, right? Or you could do it on the outside also. And that solves the problem of them, set apart. Right. So that's this material. Most of us have started moving away from that. But if you do need this material, you need to know where to order it. That's another thing also. There's a few different suppliers, and you can come to me. I can give you the information. Yes?
Rabbi Akiva Steinmetz would instruct Toronto technicians to run putty in the seam, making them one piece with a little sort of ramp, so they appear to be
on the inside or the outside?
On the outside. And we would often do this when we found utility U conduit there, and we would simply attach them with putty.
Right. So you could use putty, or you could use silicone or something like that to connect them as well. Yes.
I don't understand. What would be the issue of space in the middle? If the string goes on any part on top, and the space in
The space in the middle would be pischei shamai. Some people don't like having a break in the middle of the lechi.
the lechi's on the part that it touches, right? And the other part, let's say it's a complete gap. You're allowed to have a gap at least of 3 tefachim.
No, so there are those who allow up to 3 tefachim in the middle of a lechi, and there are those who don't, because they say pischei shamai. Okay. The next is 3/4 inch U guard, which is the exact same thing. It's just a little thicker. You can order this from Framtrack. The other advantage of 3/4 is that it fits kind of nicely over this. So if you're trying to make repairs, sometimes it works very nicely. The other thing, the next thing that Rabbi Steinmetz and I were working with was we found that Framtrack also makes a flanged U-guard. We thought that this would be much more durable because of the flange sticking out. We thought that it would not become as warbly as it went up the pole. I think our experience was negative. Would you agree, Rabbi Steinmetz? So we're not recommending this, but you might see it out there. Moving up to the next thing is the 1/2-inch conduit. 1/2-inch conduit it's a full conduit, so it's much stronger. I think that's what they used in the Monsey Eruv for many years, and I think many Eruvin moved up to this. And 1-inch conduit, which is even better. The advantage of these conduits is that they have a flare out on the bottom. So when you want to connect them, they connect. Here, there's no issue of this one not being over this one because it's directly over because of the flare out. This is what I personally use this as my go-to for l'chayayim because of the fact that the connection is very, very good. And with glue as well, I've never had any problem with the connections coming apart. What else do I have listed over there? Does anybody have my notes? So the cost of this, it used to be $495. After COVID, now it's $1495. So yeah, no, not per foot, for a 10-foot section. So another thing that we were thinking of doing, which is another thing that this Chaver Shaft would help. So Zisha had somebody make him how many 10,000 pieces? So he uses the 3/4 inch conduit, which is it's just a compromise between these two. It's the same stuff. And he ordered 10,000 pieces from China, and he was able to get it at $4 a stick. I was thinking of making an order. It's just a lot of stuff from keeping my garage. So this will only really work for the people in the tri-state area, but we could think of making joint orders on some of these materials and then ordering it together and saving each other money. I think that would be something that's another thing that I want to put on the table that we can all have discussions about, perhaps in that WhatsApp group, if somebody is able to order it in bulk. The other problem is also, even at $4 or $5 a stick, if you're going to have to order 10,000 minimally, that's a decent amount of money to lay out. So we'd have to find, I wouldn't mind laying it out, but then we have to find a way of taking care of who gets what and how we dish it up. But that's another thing that I wanted to bring forward, is the idea of ordering this materials in bulk, which would be very nice, and bring down the cost. Yes. The glue, I don't find the glue coming apart on the joints ever. I just find that from the expansion, I can see that the top and the bottom sometimes are a little further off the ground. So Rav Shafter mentioned in the previous thing that he doesn't allow lavud at the bottom of the lechi. Most eruvin do allow that, but when you're trying to be machmer, that's where you see that in the winter that's never all the way to the ground. I have solutions for that, but it's not something that most people need to deal with, so I'm not going to get into it. Yeah.
One of our technicians would drill through the 1-inch conduit and secure the conduit to a wood pole with a screw or a nail. It was just cheaper than using a 2-hole strap bracket.
I'll get to that when I do the straps. Now the next thing, which is kind of
we use the U-guard mostly, but when you have the wire is sometimes 2 feet from the pole, it's out on an arm. The conduit is very good for arcing out.
This is much easier to arc out. If you do need to arc very far away from the pole, I find the conduit, I can do it with both, but I find the conduit is much easier. A number of people have started experimenting, and this is maybe a chiddush for some of you, with this type of U-guard. I just cut off a little section of it. This U-guard is, I think this is a 3 to 4 inch, and It comes in 8 to 10 foot lengths, and then it has a little flare out at the end, and you could put another piece underneath it. It's usually used by the phone company when they have pole risers. When they have power coming down the pole, they'll put this over it. It comes in 4-inch. You can even have 6-inch or 8-inch. They have huge ones. The advantage of this is for those who are trying to be machmir, that their lechi be straight. You can usually not have to bend away from the pole, because this comes, this will be 4 inches, or depending on which one you get, it could be 4 or 5 inches off the pole, even without you having to bend it out off the pole. The original thing that I didn't like about it was the cost. I was paying $25 a stick for this in the places that I found that I needed it. But Baruch has said that he's been able to get it even cheaper than 1-inch conduit. So if those who are interested in that material, there's room for us to grow in terms of figuring out how to use this material. I do question whether we're going to run into issues with the utilities. I remember when I first started putting this up and I decided to go to this, I thought it was outrageously large. But after putting this onto the pole, and I thought the telephone company wasn't going to allow it. But after putting this, thousands of these on thousands of poles, and no one complained, so maybe now we have enough chutzpah to go up to this. And if they don't complain, they don't complain. But some of it does depend on the area that you're in and what you can get away with.
Up to you.
What?
Complaining in the company,
As
but
long
it's up to you.
as long as they don't complain to me, right? Yes?
For the 1-inch PVC conduit, how did
Starting now, if we could just, anybody's comment, we're gonna use a microphone, because not everybody can hear.
for the PVC conduit, how did you attach it to the poles? Did you have
Okay, that's going to be actually my next, if you look at my outline, a little further down, we're going to be my attachment methods. So I'm going to get into that. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to discuss, because I've still been noticing this in eruvin, that if your lechi's not under the wire, there's very little room to be makel. You could be makel on allowing your lechi to bend. You want your lechis to be straight. You can, different poskim will have different tolerance for how much to let the lechi bend. But everybody's masking that it has to be under the wire. Initially, when they first used to make the eruvin, when they used this stuff, the way they would keep it under the wire, Dave August would take one U-nail behind like this, and then one long U-nail. These are actually from him, I believe, from his time. And he would put this longer nail over it. And the difficulty that they had was between winter and summer, as the wood and the pole expands and contracts, actually pushes the nail out. And eventually these nails would fall out at the top because they were barely in to begin with. They were only in part way. They weren't banged in all the way because they were trying to hold the lechi off the pole. And eventually these things would fall off. And this thing would just kind of be flailing around, and it wouldn't be under the wire. But the checker would hardly ever notice it because the checker would come by. He didn't have the right perspective to see that it was off by a half an inch, or it was off by, it was too far back, it was too far forward. So what I came up with is, I make these myself. It's a pain in the neck, but I would cut pressure treated lumber, and I would make these. These are standoff pieces that I would use. These are for 1/2-inch conduit. I have different thicknesses, and then the way it would work, you'd put a 2-hole strap, let's say like this, and then you have 2 screws on each side holding it under the wire so that the top can't move around. And I found this to be much better in terms of making sure that the top stays underneath the wire. For the 1-inch conduit, here's a bigger standoff piece when I need to pull with a lechi further away from the wire. And then I got tired of having to cut all these, and I realized if I take all my scraps of old conduit, I could just cut them to different sizes, and they would do the same thing. I put them behind, and I have them pre-drilled for 1/2-inch, and then I have them pre-drilled for 1-inch. And whatever you would use, that's what I found to be very, very helpful. If you don't have time to manufacture your own pieces or the patience to do it, they have a thing called stackable cable spacers, and I meant to bring some.
You just slice a thin slice, a little, however long you need, a slice of tube. If you're putting screws straight in, take long screws, and just screw it in.
Basically, okay, yeah. I'll explain why I don't love that thing in the next thing we just do attachment. But yeah, that does work. Some of my opinions have to do with perfectionism and are not necessarily need to be followed. So the stackable cable spacers, they come in 1/2-inch increments, and you can stack them one on top of the other. And then you could put 5 of them, 4 of them, 3 of them, 2 of them. It's easier because mine, I have to keep fishing into my bag to figure out which one of these is the right thickness, because each one is its own thickness. Although I can stack them, the holes that I drill don't always match up. So on the stackable cable spacers, they're very good because you can just stack as many as you need. The difficulty that I've found is that they're not wide enough for my 1-inch conduit. So I can't use stackable cable spacers on 1-inch conduit. If anybody could find stackable cable spacers for 1-inch conduit, that would be helpful for me. The problem is that the cable spacer itself, so what I've found sometimes is that if the cable spacer is not screwed in with the screws that are in the 2-hole strap, what ends up happening is the cable spacers fall out. So what I would sometimes do is put the cable spacers, put a screw through them into the pole, and then holding them in place, and then put the bracket around, and then put a screw on each side. That does work.
Rabbi, where do you buy the cable spacers?
So the cable spacers, you can get them from Allied Bolt. There's a company called Allied Bolt that sells, but they're probably distributors all over the place if you look at them. I find them on eBay and on Amazon. I found if you put in stackable cable spacers, you'll find them in Amazon, you'll find them on eBay. And sometimes on eBay you can find them cheaper, sometimes they're more expensive. And there's a company called Allied Bolt that sells them. I think that's the cheapest is Allied Bolt. Allied Bolt will not sell to me because I once made an order and it didn't come in and it was 2 months late and I told him I'd like to cancel it and he got angry and he just said, we won't sell to you anymore. So that was.
I see you invented a lot of things so far. Have you invented anything to hold the cable for your third hand? That seems to be. I'm being
hold
curious.
my cable. What do you mean?
Meaning, if I'm having 2 cables on 2 sides, and I need to hold one while I'm pulling the other. The third hand would be. So actually, I started working on something with an engineer from a fishing rod to use a fishing rod with an extension, but I have.
When I'm pulling 2 wires, I need to let go of one.
Like you need to hold one and pull the other one and tighten both of them at the same time. Like having another hand to hold it in place while you.
What I do. I mean, it's diverging from the. But it happens to be one time I was away in Eretz Yisrael and I sent my son to go do a repair, and I think my sons who've worked with me know everything that I know, but that's not true. And he came to the scenario and he struggled for about a half an hour, and then I said, "Why don't you just do that?" And he goes, "I didn't think of that." Basically. When I have 2 wires and I want to let go of one of them, I just take the wire. You could do this with any string. I just put a ferrule in it. I bring back the loop. And I tie a knot. And then I take this and I hook it onto whatever hooks on the side of my bucket, and that's what holds it. If I'm really stuck, I'll put a screw into the pole and I have it hold it and I let go of it while I'm working on the other wire. That's what I do. If I was working with string, I would just make a loop in the string and then tie it onto my bucket or tie it onto something else. Okay, that is, so that's it for the standoff pieces. So the stackable cable spacers are good. I was also thinking of, in mass, if there were people who really were interested in these and they use them a lot, the guys who do a lot of work, if we could somehow mass manufacture these or produce them in China or something, that would also be very helpful for me.
Everybody that I also use the 2-inch U-guard or 3-inch U-guard as standoff pieces. If it's really far off the pole, those could be very helpful for that.
Right. You just cut a piece of this and you use it as a standoff piece. Right. I mean, basically, you just want to get any piece of material behind there to hold it out. The next thing is what people use, the attachment methods. So I wrote here U-nails. I already discussed the difficulty with U-nails and why I don't like them is because they fall out between winter and summer. Yeah?
Talk about 1G.
What?
1G, did you talk about?
What was 1G? Oh, wood. Okay, this is for Divizamic. So, especially for those who want to be machmir, that their lechis be straight. And they don't want to pull their lechis off the pole. They don't want their lechis to be curved. So there are many eruvin that are working in that direction. So using 16-foot 2x3s has been, and those are very easy to attach to the pole. You don't need the straps. You can drill straight through them onto the pole. And using 2x3s or even 2x4s turned sideways, and you could drill those onto the pole, then you can get a straight lechi going all the way up. And then Dewey told me he'll cut a bevel cut in the wood so that the 2 pieces of wood are kind of like, angled against holding each other together so that they don't pop apart. Is that correct? Yeah, doing a miter cut, this an angle. So he gets 16-foot lengths, when getting wood at longer lengths is harder. And then if he needs to put a piece at the bottom, he does a bevel cut and he puts the two there, and that's, I mean, if we'll get away with it, once again, he seems to be getting away with it in his areas. I know that you will not get away with it in Rockland. That I can guarantee you, right? You will not get away with putting 2x4s on the poles. Orange and Rockland has a file, and they'll have pictures of your 2x4s. So I know it has to do with what you're able to get away with. Sometimes if you're, what I find, if you're very far out of town, you're in Milwaukee or other places where they're not afraid of eruvin and they're not afraid of Yidden moving in, so that you can get away with a lot more stuff. When you start getting into the tri-state area and Tom's River or other things, it gets much, much harder. And Muncie, it gets much, much harder with what you can put on the poles, and you have to conform much more to what the utilities are going to be asking you for.
I can invite everyone to move to Silver Spring, where you can get away with almost anything.
That and Manhattan. Okay, attachment methods. We did the U-nails, screwing straight through the lechis. Now this is I know it's done, and many people here do it, and with all due respect, my opinion is that you shouldn't be drilling straight through the lechis. It is the lazy man's way of doing it. The reason why I don't like it is that, as we said, the lechis expand and contract up to 1 inch for every 10 feet. If you put a screw through it, it has nowhere to expand and contract. And then from winter to summer, eventually your lechi starts bowing and becoming like a snake going up the pole, and then it starts popping off the pole. Now that won't happen to all of your lechis, because that'll happen mostly to the ones that are in the sun. The ones that are in the shade, probably it won't happen to. But it happens to some of the lechis, and that's why and then also, when the lechi does get hit, if the plastic is solid and a truck hits your lechi, it will usually stay solid. And it'll rip the two whole straps off the pole, but the lechi will often stay there. It's not the be all and end all of everything. But I found that with two of the screw on each side and a metal 2-hole strap, it's able to survive a lot more than it is when you put one screw through it.
I've found that even with the 1/2 inch, it will start curving over the years.
Right, these do.
Some of the original Buffalo Grove ones.
These will remain straighter for longer than these and all the others. And I'm sure that these will remain even straighter for longer than, as you move up.
Years.
For those of us who work significantly with wood lechis, either as temporary ones because we don't have access to a truck or a tall enough ladder,
Right.
or in some places where we have some permanent wooden ones we discussed, first, you don't have the same problem with screwing them because the wood of the lechi expands and contracts more similarly to the wood of the pole. You don't have that issue as much. But also, I've found specifically if you're using screws and you're going to make sure you're using both the correct screws but also the correct driver. We found I assume there are other people here who have discovered this. We found using a regular traditional drill or powered screwdriver doesn't work so well on the telephone poles.
Use an impact
using
driver.
an impact driver, just to make sure people know, using an impact driver. We have found some places where the companies that own the poles have done maintenance. They've done termite treatments and things, and they actually have to cut the screws because they do not have power tools that are able to unscrew the screws that we put in with an impact driver.
They don't carry a Phillips head. Or they don't. We built the Eruv in Tom's River, so somebody had one of those doorbell cameras. We were having a lot of anti-Semitic vandalism. And the oddest part was that some of the vandalism was above 15 feet. And that boggled my mind, because how did the vandals get up there? Then one person found on their Ring doorbell, I still have the video, a Verizon truck pulls up. It was somebody who actually worked for Verizon who was upset about the Eruv. And he got out and he took some type of hatchet or mallet, I don't know, something like a sledgehammer, and that he was smashing the lechis. And that's how he did it. And I was thinking, a guy with that amount of technical knowledge needs to smash them? I mean, I could have done so much more damage in so much less time with a drill or an impact driver. But it's a good thing I'm not on the other team.
And up in Ottawa, we have a lot of freezing rain, and one of the big problems is the trimmer line strings that we have come down. I find with the 1-inch conduit, we can use fish tape because not all of us have lift trucks like other people.
Right.
And
Us
we can
spoiled
use
folks.
fish tape to string the string through the conduit and secure it at the bottom rather than having to climb the pole in the ice.
Oh, okay, that's good. Another thing for 1-inch conduit. Okay,
You can't drill through it. That's one of the reasons you don't drill through it. You use tool strap.
right. Now, one minor point that I just wanted to show out to just the degree of precision that if you go to Home Depot, you can buy a 1/2-inch 2-hole strap. This is an EMT one. You can get a 1/2-inch 2-hole strap, but it's a rigid conduit one. You can get a 1/2-inch 2-hole strap. This is a 1-inch 2-hole strap. The EMT 1/2-inch straps. Now, I don't know how they can both be 1/2-inch and be different sizes. I
One is
haven't
inner
figured that out.
diameter and one is outer diameter.
Something like that. These fit perfectly on your 1/2-inch conduit. For those of you who use 1/2-inch conduit and you're getting tired of the U-nails, but you still want to fix. So when I go to do a repair on a 1/2-inch piece of U-guard, if it's a 1/2-inch U-guard, I'll use the 1/2-inch EMT straps. And if it's the 3/4-inch U-guard, if you use the 1/2-inch rigid straps, they fit perfectly. And the perfection with which they fit does help in terms of securing it very nicely. So there's little details like that also that if you want to contact me about exactly which 2-hole strap to use for what material and how to, I can share that with you as well.
Another detail about the U-guard, which
Wait for the microphone.
you're inadvertently illustrating every time you pick up the U-guard. Insects like to build cocoons inside them. So if you have used ones, do not bring them into your house.
Correct.
Look inside of it.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I've had them crawl, the earwigs crawling all over me, yeah. My kids wonder why when I have bugs on my glasses and my face, I don't bother to wipe them off. I said, because I have them all day on my face. Okay, next is wire. The next most commonly asked question that I get is for Eruv wire. And so I thought we'd discuss that. I did put this Eruv wire order form. This is the company that I use to order the wire. And you can call, you can email or call, and they'll send you the wire. The wire is a stainless steel braided with a vinyl coating on it. This is a 60-pound. This is what Duvi likes to use in the 5 towns. This is, you can still tie knots in this. That's one of the advantages of this over the other steel wires that I'll be mentioning, is you can actually just tie a knot. Not everybody wants to use crimps and crimping tools. It adds another level of complexity to things. But this will work. The advantages of this steel wire are that it doesn't droop and it doesn't stretch with time. So in my era, for a while, I was using a nylon wire, and when we had a very thick snow, a very heavy, wet snow, so I had like 20 to 25 wires go down in 1 week. And it was a struggle to get them all up at the same time. So even though it was a good material, it just, for the problem that every once in a while would bring a disaster, that's why I turned away from it.
Just shake a little bit.
Right, so it is nice that if it does droop with snow, if you tap it, then it'll go back up. But if the first thing to tap it is a truck, then it won't go back up. So that's the problem.
Does the utility company allow you to use wires?
The utilities, as far as I know, never let us use wires. This it's actually steel wire inside with a vinyl coating. So it looks vinyl, but it's
one of the Verizon guys told me don't use the metal because someone in the hospital because
right. So I've heard negative things about this. I will point out that the wires that they use on their poles, the telephone wires, also have braided steel inside. The same thing, but
visible. It's more visible.
this is a fiber optic cable. It also has braided steel inside, so
Yeah,
I'm not sure
it's thicker.
it's
It's much harder to get to chop off somebody's head or arm with that than the other wire
right.
you use as
It
a
could be
garret.
at 60 pounds though. It shouldn't. Nobody should lose a head on 60 pounds, but
Somebody
it could be.
almost lost wrist.
If somebody does want, if you don't want to use this wire because of risk, I won't have any tinnitus.
No, it's usually fine, but if you're holding, it's rather a safety concern. People sometimes, if you wrap it around your hand, you're trying to bring the wire, and the other end is on the street, and a car comes and takes the whole thing. Which lose any wire, but especially the thinner wires, you could lose limbs.
Correct. I've seen it. Not losing of limbs, but I've seen some pretty bad cuts. Okay. This is the 60 pound. This is the 80 pound. Now, if you'll notice on these things, this particular company that this order form, just so you don't get confused, you'll notice it'll say on it, this says 40 pound. The 80 pound wire says 40 pound on it. And the reason is this wire is actually not made for fishing. It's made for Costco to hang signs. And they sell a lot to Costco when they hang all the signs from the rafters. And predominantly, this company is selling to framing people. So they want to put the weight of the frame that you're going to be hanging on your wire. So this wire is an 80 pound test, which is what it says in the thing, but they write 40 pounds on the spool itself. So there's the 60, there's the 80, and I don't use them much. This is the 110, and this is 210, and you can take a look at them. I've never found a need for these. The stronger the wires get, the more concern I get that someone will get hurt on them. And the biggest problem with these, as somebody was mentioning to me about right before I got up here, is that the spools themselves crack when you drop them, and then you lose all your wire. So these don't tend to crack as much. I've learned how to throw these down without cracking them, but it took a lot of time. Yes.
Rabbi, people who say to me advertising doesn't work on me are bold-faced liars because it does work. I'm very careful when I talk to officials, goyim, yidden, that I use the term string anytime I can because the term wire, it's wire, how many volts are going through it? There's concerns of safety and what. String, it's friendly. It's just string. It's nothing to worry about.
I call it
and
fishing
the word
line.
is another word that is safe.
Yeah, fishing line.
The word wire, I've found creates panic in people. It's just easier when I say string.
So the next thing I thought I would share with you, which was a fun chiddush that I came up with. In Tom's River, we had to run a wire, and in Tom's River, like I said, even guys who were working for Verizon were looking over our shoulder. So this is actually a piece of fiber optic cable. So oftentimes I will harvest old pieces of fiber optic cable or old pieces of coaxial cable, and if anybody's ever in the need of this, I can give them more of the technical information, but this is what they use to hold your fiber optic cable when they do a drop line to a house or from one pole to the next pole. And then they have a drop line hook, which I think I have one in here. You drill into the hole, you put a drop line hook, you run actually a fiber optic cable, which looks exactly like their stuff. If you're in a place where you find that vandals are taking down your wire or you're trying to hide your Eruv wire, using coaxial cable or the actual fiber optic cable is very, very helpful. And it was very successful in Tom's River.
One thing we looked into a little bit of that around some places is if you're harvesting that from things that were already abandoned, you make sure you know they're abandoned, but that's one thing, they're already on the pole. But if you're sourcing that from somewhere else, you find some surplus listing or something, you have to make sure that it's actually rated to be self-supporting, that if it's a fiber optic, that it's a steel carrier wire, or that if it's coaxial, that it's not gonna rip itself apart.
Yes, we had a ski resort where a bunch of Yidden were buying in this little thing next to a ski resort, and they wanted to put up an Eruv, and we had to do it clandestinely. And I went to order the coaxial cable, and I almost ordered the wrong stuff because, like you said, it didn't have the coaxial cable has built into it its own support wire, and you'll see the coaxial cable here, and then this is the support wire that's kind of built into it, which I would show somebody how to do it if they wanted to use it. But they sell some with support wire and some without support wires. You have to get for external use with a support wire. I would give all those details. But anybody who's interested in something like that, who ever had a situation where they needed it, and I think that's generally my whole presentation. So if you ever run into a scenario where technically you don't know what it is that how you're going to get this thing done, that we're going to have a WhatsApp group, and then there's a number of us who have a lot of experience doing a lot of crazy little things, and we can give these ideas over to people. What time?
3F, don't use plastic strap.
What?
3F, don't use plastic strap.
Okay, these are the metal straps. If you use plastic straps, they will always be broken within a few months. If you want any examples of that, go to 164th Street in Kew Garden Hills, where Dave put in the plastic straps. They're almost all broken. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just having. I had to give Jay a hard time. It's not his doing. Okay, yeah. So another thing, there's a lot to be said about tools. I couldn't possibly go through all the different tools that we have and that we use. So I used one example just to show you that if there's a lot of research out there, and I've done a lot of it for you. So if there's a specific tool that you're looking for, just give me a call. If you're looking for a pole pounder, or you're looking for a rotary drill or chainsaw or anything, just drop me a line. Whatever I know, I will share with you. So the one example was nail pullers. So when I was redoing the T-neck Eruv, so they had just this U-guard, and the person had put nails in, and they were in love with 4 to 5 inch nails, and they like to put somewhere between 30 to 70 into each lechi. So I became very, very proficient at pulling nails. But very often where you want to run your lechi, there's nails in the pole, and sometimes it's hard to bang them all back in. So I've become proficient in nail pullers. So I figured that would be the tool I would pick. But I don't know if that's relevant to most of you, but any tool that you do need to know about, please feel free. So when it comes to nail pullers, and I have 2 to give away today. Simple nail puller would be this. And I have these 2 crescent nail pullers, which if anybody wants them, they can have them. They will do nothing but pull out nails, but they grab the nail, pull tight, and it gives you this nice curve, and it pulls the nail out.
The numbers sign.
For the what?
The numbers from the pole. It's also good.
If you want to pull those numbers out, you're probably going to need a pry bar to get underneath the nail initially. Otherwise, you're going to rip the head of it. It's an aluminum nail, and the head's going to break right off. So that's your simple nail puller. This they will sell at Home Depot, and you can get it. Then I found online one improvement to this. This, you can only find it at this particular person's website. So if you want one of these, you have to get the specific information of this one nut who made this. You'll notice he put there's a second hinge into it. So once you put it on the nail, this one, you have to keep squeezing as hard as you possibly can. Otherwise, you'll let go of the nail. This one, because of the second lever, even if you're holding one of them and you're pushing down, it causes it to close on the nail. And this is my go-to for pulling out nails. This thing has been my Yeshua, at least in T-neck.
Comment? One advantage of U-guard is that if you're replacing an Eruv that has ground wire molding, then you don't have to remove the ground wire molding. You
Right.
can just put it straight over it.
Right over. He is going to be the U-guard salesman. He's been just so if you guys want to know the lay of the ground, we all have our own little things that we each run trying to push. So his is U-guard, and he's got a very good point. He's probably going to convince me eventually to move over to it. And that's the thing that we should all do. If we're all learning from each other, and me and Rabbi Steinmetz were going through we first got this, we were so excited, and we decided it's not good, but now we're moving on to the next thing. And everybody coming up with these little chidushim, but it's a shame for us not to all be able to share it one with the other and get all this knowledge out to everybody. It's not everybody has to learn the same way.
Good. Shame, Omro. I got a lot of my stuff from Rabbi Paretsky over there in the corner.
That was the other thing. I was also thinking that we should put out a directory with everybody's name and numbers so people can call each other. And this is another one that you can only get at the Quick Gripper website. It's for pulling out nails. It does have the pry bar on it, but if you open this up and you put the nail through, this can pull a 4-inch screw out from the opposite side, meaning if you screwed it in this way and the head is on this side, this has so much leverage, it'll yank the entire screw with the head through the 2x4. So I keep it in my truck because every once in a while I do need to put up a lechi and there's something in the pole that's just not coming out, or a nail that the head came off of. These can pull out nails without heads. Now, I don't think that this information is so important for most of you guys. You probably don't have to pull out nails as much as I do. But that's my point, is that I'm a little bit nutty when it comes to tools, and I've just amassed a lot of knowledge, and I want to be able to share it with everybody. So you can take my number, and anytime you have any tool or anything that you need on in terms of tools, please feel free to contact me. And my lunacy in terms of finding out what tools there are. And in terms of impact drivers, then there's the Surge made by Milwaukee, which is an impact driver that's quieter, because I'm losing my hearing from impact driving next to my ears all the time. So for an extra $100, you can get a special impact driver that has hydraulic fluid in it that makes it quieter. There's all these different types of little details and tools that for some people can make the difference between whether they can get something done or not. And I'd love to be able to share it. Yes, I would be glad to open it up. If any other people who are building eruvin who have any other things that they think that they would want to share, I think that's what we can do right now. I think I think I got through everything here.
You don't sell U-guards in gray?
This U-guard is gray. The smaller ones, these, they sell them in black and they turn gray. No, they do. They turn gray.
They sell them.
Gray color is a lot easier to see on the poles.
Yeah, this is.
It
No,
depends what
that
color
is
poles
that is
are.
true. When I was once out with Rabbi Jachter, he was telling me these you can inspect from the car, and you can see from top to bottom, and that it's under the wire very clearly. And these you can almost never inspect from the car. You can't see that it's under the wire. You can't see the whole thing. You can't see if there's a break in the middle. The black is a downside.
Another benefit of U-guard that I've had is that checkers tell me that it's so easy to see, just like the gray conduit. The U-guard being physically bigger, it makes it easier.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to be easier to see
Big
if you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question over here.
No, I was just gonna make another plug for the U-guard. We use the U-guards in our Eruv, and you don't have to worry about the nails because we have a banding tool that wraps a band around the. We have metal poles.
Well, metal poles.
Yeah.
I hate those. Yeah.
Oh, you hate metal poles? Oh no. Rabbi Jachter's favorite kind of metal poles actually in Chicago, which the pole has a built-in lechi. I don't know if he told you.
Oh,
about
okay.
this.
City,
Yeah.
what city are?
What? Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in terms of the person that was, I'm just curious about the person that you said was purposely damaging the lechis. I'm assuming the community had permission from the mayor or a fire commissioner to make the Eruv, can they be charged with?
I told them you have a video of the guy, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to do it.
Can they be?
They didn't want to. They didn't want to go after
for the
legal
expense
action.
to keep repairing these.
No, I think they did something which they got even a better revenge. They expanded their Eruv 3 times and had another 1,000 families move in, which is probably a much greater revenge. No, I was surprised that they didn't go after legal action, but they chose not to, and they probably were smart in that way too. They didn't create more animosity. It depends. If it's one person that's damaging your stuff, so then maybe legal action would stop him. If there's an entire group, then you can create animosity. I don't know. It's a political question. I don't really. Yeah.
More on the U-guard as far as the difficulty of seeing that it's under.
You're talking about the smaller unit?
Yeah. The difficulty of ensuring that's under. So we learned from Rabbi Yonah Riviat in Baltimore. He puts white, it's like a cane tip on top of the U-guard. It serves several benefits. It expands the area, makes it easier to make sure it's under, and also easier to see it.
Yeah, so what he's mentioning is also putting caps, putting a white cap on the top of these, which is also my go-to. Either I put white tape or a white cap. Putting a white cap makes it much easier to check. And as he also mentioned, if you put the cap is taller than it is wider, but even if it moves, as long as the cap is still over the cap, you've expanded the top of your lechi, and that's a good point.
Is there a cap at the center?
Is there a cap with the center? You can drill a hole in the cap. Yeah.
I'm saying, but is there one that comes, because the ones that are sold have an offset, and you have to catch it on the right angle. Are the ones that are just center?
I mean, I buy caps and I drill the center. I drill a hole in the center. I don't think they're the ones that come pre-drilled.
And do you have any rings? Do you have
Regarding the
you have on top of the cap a certain screw, which let's say it's a ring which is square, so you can not have any minatzad shalas. So where the screw will go on top of the string will go totally on top of the screw. Like if you have a ring and you go in the ring, if it would be square or something, then it would stay on top. If it's round, it moves to the side.
So I think he's asking, which I'm not prepared to present, but when you put a cap on the top, and now you want to run a wire to the top of your lifting, or if you have a steel pole and you want to run a wire to the top of the steel pole. So what type of things can you put on the top of those caps to avoid any minatzad questions? I would say you should speak to Chaim Yadlovker because he's been dealing with that a lot. You can speak to him after also. I have what I use, but he's been dealing with certain people who are incredibly machmir, and he's come up with some great little tips for if you want to really, really be machmir and what you use on the top of them. He has some good stuff.
We have a question over here.
Comment. Talking about the color, people commenting on the color and easier to see. The different types of materials are harder to see. Something we've noticed, and I think this is happening more all over the country now, is that the traditional color of the pole of the telephone poles, that really dark brown that the gray shows up well against, is changing as companies are discovering that the chemicals they treated the poles with have environmental impacts that they might want to avoid. We've been seeing the vast majority of new poles are treated in a way that retains the natural light color of the wood. So the darker material, the black material, is showing up a lot better on new poles.
Oh, that's good to know.
We have a comment over here.
Yes, I'm Dr. Miller. I'm the person who hired Rabbi Ribbiat in Baltimore in around 1982. I wanted to bring to your attention the rule of the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company is that no straight nails are permitted. And their reasoning was if a motor vehicle would impact the pole and break the lechi, so now you have a little dagger coming out of the pole. Now, should a pole climber, there used to be people called pole climbers, now they use bucket trucks. Should he climb the pole, it is likely that he will slice the inside of his thigh with the rusted screw. Now, pole climbers don't like that. They don't like a lengthy stab into the inside of their thigh. So that's number one. Number two, the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company insisted they limited us to use only materials that they use themselves. Now that came out to be a bracha because any bad person looking to damage the eruv can't tell what's the eruv and what's the material of the power company. Whereas if we would have used what we originally asked for, 2x4s to put on each pole, the bad guys would have, you need a 2x4, go to such and such a street, rip off the 2x4s, they're free. So we don't want to establish a situation in which our attachments are automatically obvious as Jewish things on the pole. So obviously each community is different. You'll use your seichel and everybody will live happily ever after.
Anybody have a comment they want to make right now? One topic before I think Rabbi Shotkin is showing us a few more things. Possibly, does anybody use different types of string?
Yeah, I was gonna say something. I do not like the black string as a checker. It's very, very hard to see, especially if depending on where you're building. This obviously is more like the small eruvin. You could have the string running, and you could have a branch in the string, but you can't see the string. So usually we tap the string, and I have like a little collapsible walking stick. I tap the string, much like we use I happen to have on me because But this is a white. I don't know, Zisha, where do you get it from? The white string. It's very, very strong, and also it's much easier to see. Very easy to make knots. You don't have to deal with crimping or any of that. But it's very strong and much easier to see than the black string, which is, depending on the angle, sometimes almost impossible to see.
On that same line, if you look over at the Muncie's Eruv display, you'll see a red. It's actually a weed whacker wire. It's a nylon wire that the Muncie Eruv is using with a lot of success. That also is much easier to see. The same amount.
It's a single strand or it's stranded?
That one is just a monofilament, I believe.
This is, I don't know, whatever. It's a piece of normal.
It's braided.
So we have a comment over here.
Yeah.
Sag after very long. I mean, if you do it for long enough,
It'll sag and it doesn't deal as well with the snow. But there's no one wire that's perfect for everything, and that's true. The black wire is very hard for the checkers. The checkers hate it, but as a builder, I don't have that much rachmanis on the checkers.
Well,
no,
and we have places.
I'm just kidding.
We have places where we definitely want to hide it.
Right. Sometimes
The
when you
black is
want to hide
perfect
it,
for that.
right. Now, speaking of wanting to hide things, so I've come up with this, and these actually were purchased for Kew Garden Hills. These will be installed this next week, probably not this coming week, but the week after that. These are barely noticeable because they look like they blend in. So when I need to, what I found, I used to use wood, and then wood rots with time. When you use aluminum and use metal, so aluminum doesn't rust and it doesn't rot, and it's much sturdier. And this is what I'm going to start moving over to on a lot of lechis. It's a lot more expensive, but I find it's a lot better. And
You don't have to go all the way to the top.
when you're using a good asik lechi, for some, when you underneath an overpass where there's a girder that I'm using as my konosh hagabayim, and I need to put a lechi on each side of the overpass. That's what these are for. I don't need as big of a lechi because I'm not using a thin wire that's going to move.
What did those cost you?
This is one arm and this is one leg. No, they're about. This was about $80, I think, for these two. Is it $80 a piece? 80 a piece, something like that. But Kew Garden Hills has money, so it's just kidding. Just kidding. Just a joke.
Dealing with overpass, why not just put like either type of cement that dries or silicone or anything like that?
So silicone just rubs off with time. I found that this
Cement, I forget, like not actual cement that you put that should last.
So we once tried putting the cement on, and I made a monkey out of myself. It wasn't cement. It was, the white lines they have on the road. I forget what this stuff is called. It's not paint, but it's a very thick stuff, and then you heat it up, and it kind of melts on. It's like a paint. And we tried melting that onto the walls, and I ended up looking like a monkey. We ended up having to go to Home Depot. I bought flashing. I put metal flashing. I put caulking on the back, and I caulked the metal flashing on and put some screws in. This I find is better than metal flashing because sometimes on the side of an underpass you'll have it's rocks. It's not even. So the beauty of these is that since they're metal and they're rigid, so if I can just find one spot, let's say here, there's a rock sticking out, and there. So I'll put my 2 bolts here and here, or I can put 2 bolts, one here and one here. It'll support itself for the rest if it's just screwed in well in 2 places. So I find that under underpasses, this stuff is also very good.
Did you ever find that they were removed?
So these are less likely to be removed. I don't have as much experience with these. Until now, I've always been using a steel pole. A 1 3/8 steel pole on the side of the wall. But the problem is that anytime something comes by and hits it, it knocks it off because it juts out. This juts out even less, so it's less likely to be hit by things.
How much?
This one, these are about $18. They're cheaper.
I just want to add one thing, and then I think we're going to take a break. I also use a different type of string than you. It's a plastic string that Rabbi Paretsky told me about, and it comes in 200-pound and 400-pound, and it's made for fishing, and it's really good. Here's a Ma'isa Shahaya, is that we were building, and we were checking, and the 400-pound, a pretty heavy tree-like thing fell on the 400-pound in a foresty area, and it did not break it at all. I moved the tree, and it went straight back into the exact spot that it was before. So what materials you use really makes a tremendous difference in right. So the right string for the right spot, it can make a very big difference.
We had to spend 550 feet in one place. A dentist in the community donated a 600-foot roll of dental floss, and it worked for a long time.
Right, the weight, the how large of a span. All right, very good. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we have electrical safety at 4:30.